Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm driving to work, and oh god, I need to come up with a better intro. Today, we're having a little chat here about, I guess, a topic that I've hijacked straight from today's headlines, and that is the return of Ravenloft to Dungeons and Dragons. Oh! Yes, Ravenloft is back once again with the 5.5e Ravenloft source book, which is coming out only like 3 years after the like the last Ravenloft source book at the tail end of 5e. I haven't actually looked at the book or anything about it. I've seen like the cover, and that's about it. But I wanted to use this opportunity to chat about, I guess, Ravenloft in general, and sort of like the myth of the vampire, and kind of all things related to that. A couple of years ago, when I was in college, I ran what started out as a 5e campaign, slowly kind of more and more OSR as time went on for my friends in school. And this D&D campaign was based off of the big Curse of Strahd adventure, the big 5e book. I had, gotten my hands on like the giant, on Curse of Strahd revamped, like the giant redo deluxe edition inside the big cardboard coffin with all these like little goodies and pieces to it. It was like on sale at my LGS because they were switching locations. They didn't want to lug the thing, so I thought, hey, I guess I'll lug the thing to and from college a couple of times. And so I ended up running that game for about a year or so. And over the course of that time, I was able to use practically every single like little encounter, little adventure in the book. Ended up getting a lot of value out of it. But as part of my preparation work before that game really picked up, I did a deep dive into a couple of things, just so I could have like a good background to go off of. So I went through obviously that printed material as well as online what people have said kind of has worked for them in retooling parts of the Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft adventures. I went through kind of the history of the setting across like different points in D&D's life. Read through the original module, read through some of like the intermediate redos for different editions, all that kind of stuff. And I did a very deep dive into vampire mythology and lore. I read the original Dracula and went through like every single, well, not every single, but many of like the more notorious or famous vampire related media, movies and TV shows and comics and everything, video games that have come out, like the last 100 years or so, right? So there was a lot of Castlevania and a lot of what we do in the shadows there for a little bit. From all of that, I ended up, I think, coming away pretty satisfied with like the depiction of the gothic horror I had in the setting. Had a lot of like the deeper inspirations for that. I spent so much time trying to perfect my Strahd in terms of the being able to portray that character, kind of like what he was going to do. That was probably the only consistent voice I had, because I was doing silly DM voices at the time. And of course, like Strahd got all like the good theme music and battle music and stuff. So it was a whole thing. So long story short, I'm very deeply connected to this character of Strahd von Zarovich and this kind of setting of the Ravenloft, Barovia, the Dark Realms, or whatever the hell they're called, with the Dark Lords and stuff. And I think it is a really fascinating setting. It really, even though basically it's just it's just the Monster Mash. It's just a bunch of different like little tropes and pieces thrown together, but it is a great environment to make the best use out of a lot of those things. The thing I kind of, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows in Ravenloft, or I guess it would be, like dark, excuse me, I guess it would be like mist and, like dark woods and crap, I'm not sure. Because one of like the core, pieces of the Barovia, the Ravenloft setting, and I guess we can start from the top here, is, you have your band of adventurers. They're off doing who knows what. They come through this little sleepy town in the middle of the nowhere, and the mist starts to roll in. They find that no matter which way they go, the woods kind of claim them, push them back towards the town, and off in the distance, everybody is living in the fear of the shadow of Castle Ravenloft, where the dread Lord Count Strahd von Zarovich makes his rest. So the original module was kind of conceived as basically just town and dungeon, your classic Diablo old school D&D formula, where you have just this little base camp area over in the town, and then you're in and out of the castle, and there's a ton of stuff to explore in there. It's I don't even remember how many, eight floors or so worth of death traps and monsters and all sorts of cool secret rooms and goodies. It's a great dungeon. There's just so much in there to work with. And the adventuring party must slay the vampire lord Strahd, and only then will the curse over the little town of Barovia be lifted, and you can be free to walk through the mists that will recede and return back to the real world. And that's a great little self-contained module, I think, for original D&D. Actually, no, this was an AD&D module. What am I talking about? It's nice and cordoned off. I can see that working pretty well for tournament play. It's very injectable into the middle of an existing campaign, because it all kind of takes place into in some kind of other world. But that's all the original module. All of the 5e equivalent of this, Curse of Strahd, is radically different, but still shares that kind of same premise, that same DNA of being stuck with this very clear goal of you've got to go kill this vampire guy, and that's the only way you're getting out of here. And that was just something I did not really understand when I sat down and as a more newbie DM and started to prep and run the game. I think at the time, Critical Role was at kind of the height of its popularity. That everybody is always going all in into theater kid D&D, with the complicated backstories and stuff, and I was no stranger to that. That was kind of all I really knew, and so I think I asked my players to really over prepare to go role play as their characters and go build up the backstory and stuff, and then we kind of sat down. The Barovia, the Strahd stuff starts off, and then I realized, oh, wait a second, all of this existing world, that I've kind of asked the players to integrate themselves with, that just is wholly irrelevant, because they are going to be stuck in here for not just one dungeon's worth of playtime, but the Barovia map, the map of this adventure is keyed from A to Z. So we've got two dozen dungeons worth at least of crap going on, and there's no freaking way we're ever gonna be leaving this place in any reasonable amount of time. So that was a real wake up call. There, it's oh, wait a second, maybe these campaign source books are not just you shouldn't just run them totally as is. Because you very quickly can end up with situations where you inherit too much of someone else's D&D world that really just and it will never work perfectly with what is happening at your table. And that was just a constant, as this was my first like real long-term campaign that I ran, and it was just a constant learning experience of seeing like all the pieces like that were in the source book, and constant failings of them basically, where stuff from like the layout of of the book, of how the maps are kind of located in there. They're all kind of like buried in all these like little pieces. How like fragile a lot of like the core plot is without any sort of like backup plans for anything. Most of my players were also like first time D&D players too, and so of course they went full like murder hobo, within like the first 2 sessions, and ended up killing like the main the main character girl. Strahd has this like reincarnated like girlfriend who is not really doesn't really want to be with him, but he's kind of like searching her out and stuff, and the players have to like protect her, and you can end up with like a cool climactic like bust the Strahd's like wedding apart, basically, his unholy matrimony, and my players like killed that NPC like the very first time they met her, because they wanted to like steal her house basically and live in it. And so that was also very educational experience of realizing you like just cannot make that kind of planning just like does not work in D&D. You never know what your players are going to do session to session. You've got a really good guess maybe, but they are allowed to, and dare I say encouraged to really push on the boundaries of things, and so setting up this whole campaign with all of these confinements and doing a lot of it out of the book, it really felt like it was unfortunate like that there was like a set of training wheels on the campaign that I basically couldn't take off, because that is the core premise of what the players' goal is, and what they're trying to do, and so as things went along, kind of like grew less and less satisfied with at least that like 5e Curse of Strahd book. Like there are huge chunks of it that have really cool, really good ideas. A lot of like the individual little areas and encounters are really interesting. And as time went on, I started injecting a lot of like my own stuff in there, or stuff that I found online of people had made homebrew content specifically for Curse of Strahd, or like change things up. And after about I think basically like a year and like 3 months or so, that was when we that was like our we were graduating college, me and my players, and we actually coincidentally lined up pretty close with like how much content we had left in the campaign. And so we did our final couple of sessions all in Castle Ravenloft, and our the very last session like happening in like our last week on campus, where the players just spent like a couple hours straight laying the beat down on the big bad guy, and going through all of their getting through all the payoffs of all the little pieces they had, and that was an awesome experience. I will never, I don't think I'll ever forget running that game, and all of the fun I had with the players, getting to do all that stuff. But I'm always, it really did leave a sour taste in my mouth with the at least the first party Wizards of the Coast books, during 5th edition, because like from looking through a lot of them, they're all really like that. They're all like a little too long and super parasitic on injecting them into a larger campaign. It's very strange, because like I think so much of D&D and the tabletop role-playing hobby is DMs and being encouraged to homebrew stuff and having to react to what their players do and what things they take an interest in. And fundamentally, these books are overwritten in all of the wrong directions, where they don't help you deal with that core problem of having to change things on the fly and work with however your sessions are kind of laid out. So yeah, overall, I really liked Curse of Strahd. Again, lots of cool stuff. I think we got basically an entire second campaign's worth of material out of just the like Amber Temple, out of the like that Amber Temple dungeon, of like all the cool, interesting stuff in there. Fantastic, fantastic little area with a lot of ideas. But I really would not recommend it for first time players. I've since run and played through many other modules, usually much smaller. And I think especially in like the old school Renaissance, old school OSR community, a lot of the material published there fits like the needs of the working the working dungeon master a lot more closely, where there's just so much more room to put it into your game and to get it working, and they're so much more efficient and manageable to use versus like 300-page book where you really cannot use. You paid a ton of money for the book, and you just cannot use it at the table just because it's so overwritten and filled with like tiny text, and everything is laid out so horribly, so you can't find anything. Versus like an OSR book, the end papers are always are almost always like the map or the most critical information that you're going to need, and there's so much creativity and interesting stuff going on there. It really it's kind of like it's really cool, because I think that that tabletop RPG OSR scene has pushed forward the medium of books, of physical printed books, in a way that I don't think I've ever seen anywhere else. Really, no one else is doing that. No one else is using the the inside or the cover of their book under the dust jacket as a table to go roll dice on for random encounters or generating locations. Like that's awesome. That is so cool. And like it was actually useful in play a lot of the time to have stuff like that on hand. It just, I think, what we're all looking for. Anyway, enough about. I think that's enough covering the sort of like RPG and like complaining about Wizards of the Coast aspect of this. I promised the second part of this talk. We would go in and take a look at like the vampire myth. We'll look at Strahd, we'll look at Dracula, of course, and because I'm something of a vampire aficionado myself. No, I'm not a goth, but it's like they are. I think like they've been portrayed as just kind of cartoony Halloween monsters for so long, when I think the vampire really has this kind of elevated level of prestige behind it, and you like find it even in those like a lot of like these D&D books of vampires are not like low combat rating, or they're not like low level enemies ever. These guys are tough. They've got every weapon at their disposal. They're like immortal, super powered monsters every single way they can find of being incredibly lethal. And on top of that, they've got whatever skills they had in their human life, like your vampire sorcerers or vampire fighters, all this stuff, or the vampires that are transforming into who knows however many like demonic evil forms, right? It's just like such a flexible type of character to kind of use in a story. And again, the core myth of the vampire, the archetypal vampire, is really interesting, and it's a very human type thing. And so as I understand it, and obviously as always as Alex understands it, is the vampire is the vampire is a few things. He's like a bloodsucker. He's a parasite, but he's also, like an emotional, mental, physical abuser, right? He is like the worst abusive boyfriend, like the worst abusive boyfriend that Winona Ryder will ever have. Where he is, he's coming in, he's literally bleeding people dry. He's taking over their minds, hypnotizing them, and slowly, as he comes in and destroys and sucks the life out of them, he slowly makes people like him. It's like this very, very foundational thing where it's like a horrible, bad person that if you invite into your life, they can't just come get you. This is not some sort of like wild beast, right? That doesn't care. This is a man. This is a civilized man who lives in a fancy castle, who's part of like the nobility, usually, right? That he abides by the rules of society, as well as a couple of other, more supernatural ones. Even if you invite him in, you are well on your way to being basically just having the life taken out of you, and just for his own little sick, twisted games, right? And that is a really great. That is like a really great idea for a monster, because that is something real, and most, like, I think mythological archetypes of monsters, they are based on something real in that human experience. And the vampire, it was made popular. I think it existed kind of as a myth for a long time. It became very popular, concretized by Bram Stoker's original Dracula novel, right? And it represented all of these, like, worst fears of like the civilized man or civilized woman. Really, the vampires preying on women a lot, in like Victorian England, where you have all these rampant problems with sexually transmitted diseases. Obvious vampirism is an STD. That's like a very clear part of it. You have yeah, you have, like, again, he's like this member of the nobility who, you kind of like are trusting a little too much just because of his status, only to be revealed like, he's this horrible, defiling monster. You look around and he's made a mess of things. So in that original Dracula, you've got oh crap, what's his name? the Dracula's like already got like a little servant. They just did like a movie with like Nicholas Hoult with him, Renfield, who he's like the harbinger of doom here, where his mind is almost completely gone. His will has been overtaken by the vampire in preparation for him, and he's just like this, turned into like this vicious, like mindless, chaotic monster. Because he begins worshiping all of like the worst parts of this noble society, and is totally subsumed by the will of Dracula, right? That's like the whole thing. And Dracula's coming in, he does all these crazy things, like, there's the famous opening of the novel where Jonathan Harker, aka Keanu, makes the trip all the way from England to Transylvania, basically, to go visit like Dracula's castle, because he's interested in buying real estate. And Jonathan Harker is just Dracula's real estate agent, has to go travel so far away. And he's like this horribly creepy host, like you feel like he's perverting all of like these guest laws. He's keeping Keanu locked away in this like creepy, dark parts of this castle, where every corner is got something terrible going on. And then he's like basically raped. No, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word on whatever. He is abused by like Dracula's wives, like almost instantly. His like blood is taken away. Dracula's like lying straight to his face. He's like, showed up kind of in disguise to go meet him, and then this. And then, at some point, like Jonathan goes down and sees like the monster in his resting place in the in his coffin. He's all freaked out by that. It's a great even like little self-contained thing of I'm sure has been copied, numerous times. Just that piece for like little horror short stories and stuff. Excuse me. Where you show up to a house and it turns out the host is not what he seems, and that's just like a fantastic premise there. And then you go out into like the broader story where Dracula comes to England. So he's also the the darkness of the old world. He is like this 300 older ancient evil who has grown into he's like this great old piece of the Transylvanian wherever society and history, and he injects himself into the present, into modern day at the time England, and you have this like battle between old and new, and the foreign place and the back home here, and he's coming in. There's an awesome scene on the ship where he's just hunting down crewmates basically until there's none left, just to like keep himself fed on the journey over there. And then when he gets to England, when he gets to London, he the first thing he does is like defile a church, and that's where he sticks all of his stuff, all of his evil, the dirt from his homeland that he needs to go rest. And it's like this really great story of this corruption of how you invited, because again it's all about the inviting of Dracula's invited to England to come in and just buy real estate and come set up shop there, and because he's got money, and so that earns him a way in where he can go do all his foul deeds and start murdering people, and it's only kind of after a lot of he's already claimed several lives and done this and that they really catch on to him and force him out and try to get rid of him, right? It's fantastic. And like so many of those key elements of those themes and story beats are just absolutely core to the vampire story, and have been for again like the past 150 years or so. And so what has always alarmed me, after saying all that, of like how the vampire, how Dracula is like all these like worst impulses and fears and really real terrible aspects of humanity, including especially again like the abuse and the literal sucking the life out of anyone that invites him into his life. It is how in a lot of very current media the vampire is portrayed in like a more positive or sympathetic light, and we can go through the examples of that. We can really go through the examples, but like a Twilight of Edward Cullen is a really creepy guy. he is incredibly creepy, and it's really odd how all of these excuses for like bad or abusive or horrible behavior, because I did watch the first Twilight. It wasn't on my list, but I ended up watching it anyway. It's really terrible how like all these excuses are made for the love story with this like horrible guy, and and again with this lineage, it feels like the main character, Kristen Stewart, whatever, Bella, yeah, that's her name. See, I grew up in the 2000s. I know this stuff. She's being sucked into this horrible abusive relationship, and it's kind of being portrayed as a good thing, and that's like really not good for for whoever is also growing up and taking their life cues from Twilight. Oh God. Yeah, and this all I'm sure sounds like some some nice moral pandering, philosophizing, right? But it's a moral panic, right? But it's really creepy because how many people like walked away from Twilight and were like, oh, okay, abusive relationship, all of this like creepy horrible stuff, yeah, it's fine, like, and that is what I will take with me and excuse as I go look for a relationship in the real world. That's just like really horribly creepy to me. And yeah, I don't know, very, very unsettling. There was some other I think movie that I watched recently too that's very similar, where you had like the vampire being portrayed in this like very flattering light, and obviously there you can explore different dimensions to this story and different archetype, different pieces of it. But like again, like at its core, the vampire is this like horrible sexual abuser who will literally suck the life out of you. that is the core conceit of the monster. And for some reason it's now this romantic thing. And, most people again have not like really looked into this very closely, or don't really care, and they're just kind of, all they really see is just this trope, and again, just like Halloween costume, Monster Mash level character here. But it's like really, it's really bad. Like imagine if just like regular abusive boyfriend. Again, like I think that is like that's the thing. Imagine if, because like in Dracula, he's like most of his victims are women that he's really targeting and going through and stuff, and really messing up. Like imagine if that was just like a well excused character archetype that was showing up in like movies and books and all sorts of popular culture. You'd be like a little creeped out too, like if like I don't know, like you're Leo Johnson in Twin Peaks, if he was kind of portrayed in a sympathetic light for some reason after like beating the snot out of his wife. Really not good. Anyway, that's kind of like my little spiel on that. But I love, I think again the vampire is great. It's a multi-dimensional, super fascinating character that combines all of these elements of, oh my god, that was a bumpy part of the road there. All these elements of like the ancient versus the new, the sort of like nobility, the inviting abusers into your home, right? All of these like bits and pieces make it very deep, very well layered character, and I'm really glad I got to do such a deep exploration of it in like a year's worth of D&D campaigns, as well as I guess right now in the last 35 minutes. I'm trying to think of if there's anything I need to end off on here or kind of include. Oh yeah, I guess Castlevania. Castlevania is pretty good, the video games. But the show is another one there of I think that's some of like the like postmodernism taking over the brain of like the artists in our culture, where the show kind of opens up on, if you haven't seen it, it's like, Dracula, he's basically just hanging out in his castle doing whatever. He's into science, he's into all sorts of fun stuff, and then his hot anime waifu just shows up at his door, and they're super happy and pleasant together. He's not causing any problems at all. And it's actually the evil Catholic Church that comes in and screws everything up, and they're the real monsters in all of this. Yeah, I think probably there's some sort of like evil Catholic Church brain rot that is a little deeper in society, and yeah, that's another one where you get a lot of excuses for vampires and for a lot of this like really bad behavior, and all of the sort of heroes of the show are very amoral, very like the characters who are kind of just like floating around through the world, and there's kind of like just some general sense that they're here to put an end to the Dracula monster, but we all know that he's not the real bad guy. He's just kind of like a tortured soul who's been unfairly wronged, and and this and that. Yeah, so like kind of everywhere you go, the like I think especially like the last 20-30 years worth of vampire stories are full of this stuff, and kind of horribly concerning that is something that is now that has become more of the mainstream view of the vampires, that they're always these kind of like tragic characters, as opposed to really horrible monsters who have who lived that life. And again, I think we'll wrap it up here. But if you look at Strahd and his closest cousin, like the Dracula, and specifically the depiction of Dracula in the Francis Ford Coppola movie of the 90s, where they depict the mix of the historical, like Vlad the Impaler, of warlord, conqueror turned immortal vampire. I think like even Strahd, if we go to it, and I'm very thankful that actually this managed to make its way into the modern edition printings of the Strahd character. Is Strahd, he thinks that he has been beset on all sides. He thinks he's this sympathetic character who's poor and tortured, and he's looking to reunite with his like long lost love and all these things. But in reality, and again, very clearly, in reality, like he is the very clear bad guy, whose like horrible deeds have plunged like the entire his entire kingdom into eternal darkness, and are locked in this like tortuous cycle, where their souls are basically trapped and forfeit in this game for this long running like game for the soul of evil. And even like maybe the most sympathetic parts of the character, like his his eternal love for Irina, his like reborn love interest. Again, very very similar to the Coppola Dracula. Like even that part is actually in reality, she wasn't that into him. There was something there maybe initially, until she kind of like gets more familiar with the character and realizes what a raging psychopath, terrible person he was even before becoming a vampire. And that I think that is really great as a I think that worked pretty well, because when running that game and running that character, my players, a couple of them wanted to, they made it their mission to try to go hook up with Strahd, from the get-go. Like obviously that's what's going to happen in your D&D game, and getting to actually like work through that and like show it's like, oh no, like that, like there's a reason why nobody wants to hang out with this character. That was actually I think a good thing to work through. So there you go. Yeah, I think we've been rambling for a little bit, so I'll stop it there. Thank you very much for listening. I'm glad I was able to get 45 minutes out of vampires. That topic. Something smells really weird. I think I'm driving through like past the marsh right now. Ugh, it smells terrible. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yeah, no, if you're running a D&D, yeah, Ravenloft, great module. But I think I would stick with the original or with a more self-contained version of it versus going all in on the Barovia setting. So sorry, Wizards of the Coast, this is sort of anti-advertising for your Ravenloft full setting campaign book that just came out. We didn't really talk about that. That was kind of just more of the intro. Yeah, because like honestly, you don't really need it, and I think the fundamental premise of the being locked in until you kill the vampire, it's just so much tougher to work with for a full-sized months to year-long campaign than it is to like that very self-contained original module. So good luck on your future DMing out there. I hope you have an awesome time with that, and yeah, have a good one.